I'm Lohman. I'm going to show you how I make a bowl twist with a twist action on it. I've made a couple of them previously, and I'm doing this a little bit different, not a lot different. You can notice that I have these boards that are around 3 inches high here, and the plan is to get multiple rings out of this before I'm done. And I'm going to need 6 at least, and I can get much more than 6 out of this. We'll see how many I can get, but 6 is the goal. So the boards are around, well, this one's about 13 inches. I'm counting on about 12 and a half, 12 and 3/4 by the time I'm done. And I'll show you further when I get further. Next step here is going to be to glue all these boards together. Right now they're loose, and there's around 60 or so separate boards here if you count them all. Lots of each colored wood has a black wingy separator, and there's about 0.05 inches for each wingy separator. So like I said, there's around 60 pieces all together. So like I say, I'm going to glue next. Earlier I'm gluing this in sections. I'll have I think I'm going to have 3 sections, maybe 4. So I've applied the glue in between each layer here, and this is my final one for this section. Nothing magic here, just putting some glue on both sides, spreading it out, now I'll clamp. See, I don't have overabundance of glue in there, but it's spread out pretty nicely. Make sure it covers all areas. So that's it for gluing there. Now I'll clamp her up. Make sure that it's nice and tight clamps. Then I'll move on to the next section. Well, I got 5 sections glued up here. I can tell you need a lot of clamps to do this. I'm just about out of the bigger clamps. I could have probably done one more section, but I stopped there. I'll let that dry up and clean it up, and then I can start putting sections together. Alright, so this is the last glue up I have on this project here before I start cutting out the panels. I started this project this morning. This is Saturday. I cut all the boards, sanded them all, and did several glue ups to get to this final point. End of the day is Saturday, and we'll take the clamps out in the morning, sand it up, and start cutting panels out. Alright, so this next day, first day, like I talked about, I cut all the pieces of wood and got them to size, sanded them, got them to size, glued them up. Today it's all dry and together as one chunk, so cutting panels will be next. This here is like 2.9, and then I got around 12.5-inch square board here, so there's a lot of wood here. So we'll start cutting some panels next. It's approximately 2.9 inches thick, and I had to cut it down to 12.25 by 12.25 because my bandsaw is 18-inch, and 12.25 is maximum height I can cut here. As you can see, it's sitting right below the bearings there. So, all right, so I'm cutting another panel out. I've decided on this one to not first cut it on the table saw, but just cut it directly on the bandsaw and see if I can come up pretty straight. Also, I'm cutting across the grain, not through the grain, so I think that's helping a little bit too. So get the bandsaw started, show you for a minute, and I'll turn it off. So it isn't fast cutting, that's for sure. but it seems to be cutting pretty straight. And as you can see, it's at the maximum for my 18-inch jet bandsaw, but it fits. Alright, so this is how it's standing and down. I turned the air off to try to remove some of the noise. Anyway, I'll run it through the sanders, but both the panel and the block, and I'll cut the next one. Alright, I got all my panels cut up now. There's 9, I was able to get 9 in total. So, and remember we started out with a board that was 2.9 or so. Now, we got her down to 1.55. So, lost half of it. I have 9 boards made now. I actually sanded them down to a little over 0.13 thickness each one, so pretty thin. This will give me the shape I want for the bowl. Because this time I'm going to go with a bowl-shaped bowl. It's going to look like that. There's a lot of wasted material. So what I did here was made up a spreadsheet that for each board, what size rings I can get out of it. You know, when I do a straight line using the stack lamination, it very little waste. With this, though, because the rings are expanding quickly at the bottom and hardly anything at the top, you need more boards to cut your rings out. So, so anyway, I've gone through and figured out the ring sizes. Then what I did here for each panel, for each ring, so here's a board that you can see a little bit maybe. I've gone through and made rings, or the outline for what I need to cut now. So what I did here is each ring I've numbered them, and then some of them, like this one here, there's a spare in the middle, so maybe I'll get another bowl out of it. I'm not sure, we'll see if there's enough left over to do something like that. So anyway, I got 9 of these. I got all my rings. I'm going to end up with, if my plan works, with a total of 36 rings. I put a traditional closed segment base on this thing, and I might put a closed segment top on it. We'll see when we get here. But first I want to put them together. So what I'm going to do here is I'll drill a little hole on the ring that I want to cut out first, and then I'll use my jigsaw to cut that out. I'll show you how I get started on jigsaw, and I won't bore you with cutting out the rings, but basically that's what we're going to do next, is drill a hole and cut them out on the scroll saw I meant. So, alright, so gone ahead and drilled a little hole, put my blade in, and now I'm going to cut. Okay, got that ring. The first, I think, is 5 of them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue them as a whole here. So then once I do the lathing, I'll just dig into it and clear out what I want to get rid of. So what I'll be doing here, I haven't totally figured out how much of a twist I'm going to have. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So there's with no twist on it. So now I'm going to twist it. And by how much? What I like to do here is pick a spot. For instance, see, this is lined up with this one here, and here, and then I do the same here. This will be lined up with that. So you just pick a spot on your boards and always twist it that much, so you get a uniform twist on it. Anyway, that's how I do it. So I'll just go one by one. The first 5 discs, I have the luxury of using the center point here to center it on the base. So you say the first 5 are pretty nice that way. I have a center on all of them. So okay, so now I have put the base on to my faceplate waste block, and the first thing I need to do is glue my first disc on. And so Make sure the glue's evened out, and then press it in just to kind of get a total centering. And then what I'll do is I'll let it set for a second or two, and then I will put this on there for pressure, even pressure across the whole disc. And that's it for the first one. So what I'm doing here is gluing up in pairs. I find it a little easier to do it that way. And it also makes the rings, if you with an offset on it, makes them stronger. So you don't have a tendency to crack, because you do have a lot of joints there with opportunity for cracking. So, you know, these, I'm still on the discs here, not on the actual rings. I'll be on the actual rings very soon though. This is disc 4 and 5 right here. So, okay, so this is how it looks after 7 rows put on. 2 sets of 2 pairs here. We got 12 and 13 in the back, and with the red clamps, and 14 and 15 rings, and with the one up in front here. So I usually do a couple. So this is showing how I glue each ring on. So what I do after every few rows is true it up, and I'll use this guy quite often here for truing it up nice and flat. Then I run sandpaper across it, and obviously you see I've been using this, and these probably replaced at this point. That bloodwood really fills in the cracks, and the sandpaper doesn't last that long. So I just go flat against it like that when it's running. And so this last pair of rings here, what I did is I started going the other way. You can see how I was going this way, now I'm going to go that way. So started out clockwise, and now I'm going counterclockwise. And all right, so this is with ring 30 on now, getting towards the end. So this is the last pair of rings I'm going to be cutting out. So what I do on the last 6, 7 of them or so, when they get so flimsy and thin material here, they have a tendency to break apart if you're not careful. So what I do is I glue them together before I cut the outside on it. And you can see the offset there. And once the glue is dry, it's clamped to take the clamps off, and then I cut the circle after the fact. So that's the last pair of rings to glue up. I'll have to cut it like I talked about after, cut the circle out, but let it dry, and then I'll cut her out and put her on. They're on there, so they're a lot stronger with that twist on them. All right, so got all the rings cut out and put in. I'm still going to put a trim on the top to match the bottom wingy. Other than that, though, it's all, I got to let it dry now for a bit, and then put the top on, then I can start lathing. Okay, so all the rows are on now. I will have to put the trim wingy I'm going to put on the top as a trim piece, and then we'll be done. Put 3 pieces on so far, and this is actually my open segment jig, but I use it for both open and close now. Putting 48 segments around the ring here for a trim piece. I had this wood cut for a different open segment project, so just using it for the top, seeing it was already had it all cut up and made, so it's pretty easy. So all I do is keep on going around, putting piece after piece. So this type of bowl, you got a lot of sanding to do. I've lathed it, now I'm sanding. So after 4 hours of sanding, I'm ready to cut it off the lathe here. Got the bowl look to it.